Breaking the cycle to step forward. Authentic conversations from lived experience and a professional perspective in overcoming abuse with Chris Tuck and Beverley Ann.
Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle to Step Forward. I'm Beverley Ann and I'm here with my wonderful co-host.
Hi everyone, hope you're well, Chris Tuck.
And today's episode is episode number 61 and I am hosting it today. And for those of you who realise when we do our numbers, normally it's Chris, but it's coming to me today, which is just shaking it up a little bit. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about recovery again, but what we're going to do is give you more of an insight into different workshops and the stages that happens, because Chris implements them in different stages in different weeks in the workshop, but also it is client-led. So when you've got a group of people in recovery, it's amazing where the conversations can go to and how beneficial they can be for both the person independently and somebody else who may react to it at the time but then go away and reflect. And I find, Chris, as well, because I'm going to be putting my part in as well, when you're working one-to-one, because there's a benefit to both one-to-one and group working. What are your thoughts about one-to-one and group working?
I feel that if there's kind of a generic subject that everyone could benefit from, i.e. learning about the inner child, for example, what does that look like? What does it mean? And how can I apply it to my situation? Topics like that, psychoeducational, is really beneficial in group work because then we can explore people's different experiences on a higher level, not the detailed level. And then we can make it meaningful for different people. As you said, when you hear other people's stories, lived experiences, then it makes you feel not so alone. And sometimes you can really resonate with them. However, if someone has got some deep trauma that's keeping them stuck, that, to my mind, is not a good idea to bring it into a group environment. I think that is when you need that one-to-one with someone who knows what they're doing, i.e. psychologist, psychotherapist, a counsellor, whatever their background is. So you take your individual lived experience and stuckness to that expert, and then you can sort it out on a one-to-one basis, applying the psychoeducational stuff that you will learn in a group setting.
Thank you. And you've explained that really well. And the thing is, we ourselves have been through both experiences as survivors for support, both on a one-to-one basis and on a group basis. And I'm going to be very honest here. When I very first started my own recovery back in, when I was 13, I had young children. One-to-one was the only way I wanted to do it. There wasn't so much group intervention back then, but also the idea for me at that time was like, no way, not in a group, because I didn't understand what group support looked like and felt like. And that's why I think this is really important to have this conversation, because it can be one of the most, for me, freeing experiences to realize, oh, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Or, oh, it's not just because I'm a survivor and I've experienced that. That's normal.
Yeah.
On the same token, it's about being aware of your own self-care, because I'm very reluctant now to be in group settings that are mixed genders. So I have been triggered badly by a man before in a group setting, and I got support for it afterwards, but the impact of me was huge. And so for me, I choose now to be women only. And I think it's nice for people to have the choice that you can go to a mixed group, and we have been in mixed groups, or you can be in men only or women only, because that's important. And sometimes I think that's important when you break it down into cultures as well,
100%.
and faiths.
Yeah.
And also gender identity. But that's so important. And if somebody's looking for support in specific areas and there isn't any support about, it's worth thinking about how can this be started and how can we support each other, because that way it allows safe spaces.
And we all know, if we're survivors of some kind of abuse or violence, that safe space, whatever that looks like for the individual, is imperative for their healing. If you don't feel safe, you'll be in your emotional brain. You will not be in cognition, so you won't be learning. You'll be just constantly on edge, wondering what's going to happen next. So the safe space is a critical factor. So if you do run a same-sex group or service, it could be deemed as you're not meeting everybody's needs. But if you try and meet everybody's needs, you won't be meeting anyone's needs. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And there are times when it's important. And, you know, I've run groups as well, and I make it very clear that if I'm running groups, I advocate that it's single sex, because and for anyone who wants mixed, if there were enough people, I'd do that. But I think it's about making sure everyone is safe. But some of the magic's been amazing when you've seen everyone in the groups.
100%. And as you say, you've just got to make it clear right from the start what the group is going to be. So this particular next group that I'm running is going to be a mixed sex. But when you say that, I've only got one male participant and the rest female, who all know that this group is a mixed sex group, because they need to know to feel safe, and they need to know what they're, you know, letting themselves in for. And equally, I spoke to the man to make sure that he knows that he could potentially be the only man on this mixed sex group, because it just all depends who applies to be on the course. And also, when funding is really restricted and you've got 10 women who want to do a group and one man, then decisions have to be made, because funding is really limited and you need to show your funders that they're getting value for money. So do you run a course for one person, or do you run a course for 10 people? So there is a lot of decision making to be done around all of this. But it might look discriminatory. Can't say that. You say it for me.
Yeah, no, I think you said it well enough.
So it could be perceived as discrimination, and that just is not the case. It is about, first and foremost, safety for all participants, and then it does come down to funding and getting the best value out of that funding for your funders. Otherwise, they just will not fund your service going forward. So that's why it's really important that there are, as you said, these single sex spaces, men, women, and mixed. So if they can't get the service from my charity, for example, then they can go to another charity, because not all charities deal with all types of people.
Absolutely. And they don't deal with necessarily all types of abuse. So it's about asking those questions, about getting the informed, and to be able to make an informed choice is what I was going to say. And you've got your workshop that we're going to come back to. There's also support groups that I used to host years ago, and I know that there are different support groups around the country. And anyone listening, you can find out a lot about these support groups through the internet, and Survivors Trust has a list of people. For instance, there are others as well, so just letting people know. So Chris, do you want to share a little bit about, you know, when you're constructing your workshops, you have 8 weeks, and these, in those workshops, they're with you for, say, 3 hours. Now, we all have what I call the yellow brick road of recovery. That when I'm working with clients, either one-to-one, or if I am hosting anything, you know, there are certain guidelines that you work towards. Where do you start on the first week? So you've got all these people that have never spoken to each other before and they arrive. So what do you cover in that first week?
So before they even get to the room on the first week, there is an application process and there's an onboarding process. And I don't really like that term, but we use it because everyone knows what it means. So it's about making sure that everyone understands what the course is about and what it isn't about. It isn't one-to-one therapy.
Yeah.
It's not about discussing your abuse in detail. It's about learning ways of recovery, ways of empowering yourself to move yourself forwards. So the counsellor, co-facilitator will ring everyone before the course starts. Once they've applied and been accepted, they pay a £25 returnable deposit to show their commitment to the course. And that's returned to them within a week of finishing. They get a call from the counsellor. They get asked if there's any challenges, any requests, anything that we need to know in order to make their first connection with us as painless as possible, because everyone is anxious. They're anxious about coming and meeting each other, and we're equally as anxious about meeting new people and a group, because you've got dynamics that a group has to go through in order to really gel. And so they get this individual phone call just to touch base with them. Do you know where you're coming? Do you have any questions, etc.? And then on the first day, they come to the location and they are brought into a room. We spend 5 minutes introducing ourselves to each other, saying, what is it they want to get out of the course. I recalled all of that down on paper for them all, so that we've all got a starting point. This is where we're at, this is how we're feeling, and we dip in and out of that each and every week. And by the end of the 8 weeks, you can see people's journey just by reflecting back on week one, on that initial meeting. There is refreshment, so they can go and get teas and coffees and biscuits and fruit and etc. anytime they like. It's very informal atmosphere. And I always start from a place of, it doesn't matter who you are in the room. So if you come from a different culture, a different ethnicity, a different socioeconomic group, it truly doesn't matter who you are, because I always say to everyone, or male or female, it doesn't matter. We all in this room have been harmed. We're all living with an impact, and we're all here to change our lives up so that we can move forwards and fulfill our potential, find life, love and laughter after the abuse that we've suffered. So that's where I come from, because every person has a different intersectionality of their abuse, and it doesn't, if they come from a certain culture, if they come from a different ethnicity, if they're a male or female, if you're the first kid in the pack or the sixth kid in your family, you're all going to have all of those different things that will make your experience different to everybody else. And we can't unpick all of that. You can unpick that one-to-one with your therapist.
Yes.
But you can't unpick everybody's individual layers of trauma and impact. So it's about understanding that we've all been harmed, we've all got impact, and we all want to move forwards. And that starts with feeling safe with each other, learning to trust each other, building boundaries, and then learning the psychoeducation, trying to translate that into our own situation, asking questions, reflecting and applying. And if there's something that just doesn't resonate with you, bin it.
And that's what's so important. But thank you, because you've explained that so well. One of the other things I'd just like to add in is that you do this sitting around a table.
We do, yeah.
So it's like you know, what's nice about it, it's comfortable. You know, you can go out and leave the room if you want to. You can, there's lots of natural lights. You know, there's things on the table that if you need a fidget toy or a wellness tool, there's lots of different things. And I think all of these things, for anyone listening, I know that, you know, these are all important, considered things, and it's important for people to know, because we get so fearful.
Yeah.
We hear what's going to happen, but then we're like, have I got to disclose everything personal that I'm struggling with? And also, one of the things that I find really interesting is, and I've been there myself, but we sit there and we hear another person's experience, and you think, oh, that's awful. However, did you get through that? But what we do then, we undermine, or we haven't even recognized the trauma that we've actually gone through ourselves until we've heard, no, even when we're hearing other people.
Yeah, 100%. I think just as human beings, we innately judge, even though we say we don't. We all do. We all judge, and we all sort of compare. And when it comes to abuse, there is no hierarchy. I
No.
could have been raped every single day. You could have been raped once. You might be impacted more mentally and physically with your one rape than I could have been with my 10 or my
Yeah.
20 or my 30. It isn't a hierarchy. It's how has it impacted you, and how do we get around that so it doesn't have a hold over you and your life? So no one should be comparing. However, as human beings, we do. So we should just, even if we hear that someone's been through X, Y, and Z, and we try not to go there in any detail in my course, because you want to allow people to verbalize that they were sexually assaulted, they were touched, they were hit, they were raped, whatever the words are, but no details, because we want to keep everyone in the room safe. And we want to make sure that everyone in the room doesn't get triggered. Hence why the second facilitator is a counsellor, qualified, experienced, and can help anyone that is triggered, and to bring them back to a safe space that they can either go home in a safe way or they can rejoin the group. But it is about explaining to every single individual that what you've gone through is justified and you've got every right to be there, and you are there like the next person, just trying to work out what the hell's happened, what hold it's got over you, and how to break that cycle 2 step forwards. There you go. I've used our podcast title in there, but it is literally that, Bev. So we try and meet everybody at the same level, give everyone the same courtesy, the same regard, the same kind of, well, the same treatment. We treat everyone equitably, and we give everyone the same amount of time and chance to speak up or not. And it's all about trying to move everyone forwards.
And where you said speak up or not, that's really important,
Yeah,
because I always say it's finding the words for your emotions. But those words can be verbal, but sometimes they can be written down, or they can be in a form of a poem or music. So, and we all do it at different speeds. And this is
yes,
where I think some people, and I know this was part of me years and years ago, part of my concerns is, what if I don't heal as quick as everybody else? Because we put that judgment on ourselves
we
and that
do.
expectation.
Yeah,
And no recovery pathway is linear.
no, no. And what do you mean by that word, Bev?
So we tend to think that, oh, if we start recovery, we're going to go through the stages and that's going to happen, and we're going to like go
Go in
straight
a straight
forward.
line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's all going to be okay, because if I do these 10 things, that's
yeah,
it.
I'm going to be recovered.
Yeah. But actually,
No.
no. No. No. First of all, it's having the knowledge to understand how it's impacted you. And that is what you do over the weeks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, some of the topics of conversation that you have are really interesting. So
They can go off anywhere, can't they? And I think the beauty of now having experience of running 13 courses is that I now know how to get it back on course when it's going off in a certain way. Because, you know, when you start running courses for the first time, you do a lot of living and learning. You do a lot of, that didn't quite work. I'll try something different next time. Yeah. And that is the beauty of having a co-facilitator like yourself who has run different groups, like Lisa who runs groups, and like Sue who's been a facilitator in the past, all run groups in different ways. And so it's about, okay, let's try this. Let's see how it lands. Let's see what the feedback is from the clients in the room. And if it all went well, great, we'll repeat it. And if it didn't, we'll tweak it. So it's a living, breathing model of recovery. However, we do have the 7 pillars of the course to follow, because they won't change. But the conversations that come out of each pillar will be channeled by whoever's in the room. And sometimes I
absolutely.
do have to say, now, can we get back on track, please?
But that's the beauty of recovery as well, is meeting people where they are. And that is the challenge for you, to be able to hold them. And that's why
Yeah,
you have a second person there. But what also I think is the beauty is that also gives us the opportunity as participants to be able to look across and think, oh, I didn't understand that. Oh, what, you've experienced that and you've been able to do this. How did that happen?
yeah. And there's a lot of validation in the room because people will back each other up. They will say, I'm really sorry you've gone through that. So that's validation. I went through something similar. This worked for me. Maybe try that and it might work for you. So we're very careful about not saying this is the way or the highway. We're very careful about making sure that we say, this happened to me. This worked for me. Have you tried that? Yeah. And then you're just giving people different ideas of maybe they could try. And we usually get a few people in the room that have said, yeah, that's really great. That really worked for me. And I often learn a lot on each course because I will go, God, I didn't know that. Where do I find out more about that? And there's always someone who is more educated than me in the room. So we've had nutrition experts in the room, like dietitian experts. We've had hormonal experts in the room. We've had like social care teachers. So when we talk about a topic based on the main topic, so it's gone off kilter a little bit, there's always someone that can add value to the conversation because there's always someone that knows more than you. And I think that's the beauty of it.
Absolutely. Because as you said, it's an evolving, living thing. And I think that's what's lovely about it. I think also what I love seeing, and I this is innate in me, in any, even if you're just meeting for the one time, our body language shows it when it's
Yeah,
when we all arrive, we're nervous, we're anxious, all there, not, some people want to talk lots, some people don't want to talk. And then when you watch people literally over time unfolding,
yeah,
being able to take a breath, being able to hear, or being able to share in whatever way is right for them, their thoughts and their impact. And it's just lovely. And you really see people starting to shine. And yes, initially, that recovery is something that's new. Oh, I don't know how to do this. This experience feels different. I know how to survive. I know that I've been doing
yeah.
that. That's the easy bit. but you now want me to relax and not be on edge all the time, not be waiting for something to happen. But what if something goes wrong? And there's a key thing, and I've said it several times in the podcast, and I've seen people's face resonate through this when you've been talking, and you talk about responsibility.
Yeah.
And you see them like, and we all do that, you know, and it feels heavy. It's like you're giving me that bag of responsibility again. I've got enough going on. And then you say, well, turn it around. Have you got the ability to respond?
Differently.
Yeah. Do you need support from someone? And straight away, people literally sit up. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm not expected to do this on my own.
You can't do it on your own.
No.
But that phrase, responsibility, when I went onto a fitness course many years ago, decades ago, and he turned around and said, you are responsible for your own life. And the way that he said it, it was meant well, but I took it and I took it on board, and I was really angry. I was angry with him for saying that I was responsible for my life and the state it was in. And he didn't mean that, but that's how I took it. And it was like, I ain't responsible for my life. These people are like my caregivers. They
Yeah.
did this and they did this and they did this, you know, they are all responsible. And yeah, they are. But what he was talking about is if you want your life to look like this, XYZ, and it at the moment looks like ABC, only you can get yourself from there to there. So what are you going to do? What steps are you going to take to get yourself from ABC to XYZ? And when I realized that is what he was saying, and I let go of the anger, then I was able to like move forwards, you know. But I truly get why people go to that word.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's, coming back to what you just said as well, we don't always know those steps. So
No,
and
you
that's
have to learn
something,
them.
absolutely, and keep learning them.
Yeah,
We have to keep learning them.
we do.
And somebody only the other week said to me, yeah, but this self-care you talk about and recovery, when does it stop? And I said,
It does.
why would it stop?
Yeah,
Because self-care is actually nurture. You're loving
yeah,
yourself.
yeah,
You're gifting yourself. Do you say to a child once they got to a certain age, that's it, I'm not loving you anymore? You
yeah.
don't, you know. But the difference is by you learning to love yourself, by you learning, and I know that that's triggering for some people, but you're learning to nurture yourself, understand what your values, your boundaries are, can sound like, even now as we're talking to somebody listening, thinking, where the hell do I start? Well, actually, you're not expected to know all of this on your own and know the whole layout. Some of it is about letting go and thinking, okay, what first steps can I take? And that's about reaching out for support.
I think also as well, we don't tend to know about this self-care until we're adults, until something's gone wrong, and then we learn about this self-care, putting yourself first, putting your own oxygen mask on. Because when you're kids, we should just have our caregivers looking after us, and they should be the ones modeling self-care, what it looks like. They should be the ones that are praising you, encouraging you, telling you off, yeah, when you've done something wrong, so you learn those boundaries. So we should be learning all of this organically as we're being brought up. But we know that that isn't the case for many of us, even children and young people today. And they're seeing things, they're experiencing things that are just not even on the periphery of self-care. And there are some cultures, or even dysfunctional families from all cultures, where you are the bottom of the ladder, or you're not even on the rung of the ladder. You take care of your elders first. The adults and the children are like, you know,
Yeah,
sub-zero. They're nowhere to be seen in the respect. So when you've had that conditioning, and experience from these dysfunctional households that we've grown up in, abusive households, or if it's a cultural thing, then why would you put yourself first? Because when you do, that's selfish.
Absolutely. And isn't it funny how often when we're unable to look after ourselves, we're very good at looking after others.
Oh, God, yeah. I spent my whole life looking after other people in different ways.
Exactly.
But it did make me feel good, though, and it does make me feel good. But I then had to readdress that, bring it into balance, and then look after, because I do look after myself in certain ways and always have. But then there's other ways where I've neglected myself, like the downtime and allowing myself to have holiday.
Yes.
Because for years, I can't afford that. I can't
Yeah.
justify that. I can't take time out. I can't. Until one day I'm like, yeah, but why can't you? Everybody else has Sundays off. Everybody else spends some of their hard-earned cash on a holiday, a break. Why can't you? Yeah. So as you said, life's about learning and forever changing and experiencing things that you've never experienced, because at the end of the day, who knows how long we're going to be here?
Absolutely. So it's appreciating, every single day and making the changes happen. And just before we finish, I just want to say as well, that doesn't diminish what has happened to you in any way. And, we hear a lot of negative talk with people saying, well, that happened then, that was then, not now. And we are trying to, in our recovery, not be impacted by it every day. But I think the most important thing I can say is we still get triggered. I'm not going to say we don't, we still do. We still have flashbacks occasionally. And somebody said to me only the other week, what's the use then of recovery? And I said, the gifts of recovery outweigh the continued impact. And it's the gift you give yourself.
It's not only that, you're living as a survivor and thriver, not a victim, because
Yes,
victim is so disempowering. Yes, you are a victim of crime. I don't want to take that away from anybody, but you don't want to live in victim. It's disempowering. It's negatively impactful on your mental and your physical health, and you're just stuck. There is nothing in victim mode. If you want to live there just is nothing there. There's nothing enjoyable there. Whereas when you try and, unclip your wings and try all these different things and find those relationships and get the job or career you've ever wanted, or go and travel the world, or whatever it is, yeah, that is where the beauty is, and that is where life is.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you once again, because we've come to the end of our podcast. Thank you so much. If anybody would like to know more about attending Chris's workshop, it is currently in South London, but I know Chris would very much like it to go UK wide. But you can find the details on Survivors of Abuse workshop, and the link will be underneath the either video or the audio that you're listening to. So thank you very much. You
And
wanted
can
to
I
say
just
something?
say, I
Yeah.
did, that Beverley and I are open to doing workshops for professionals, for corporates, for individuals, or for groups. And we work very well together, and we've got a lot to share and a lot of take homes for attendance. So, yeah, please get in touch.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you,
goodbye.
everyone. Bye for now.